The 22 Forever game is just a day away, and on today's Locked On Utes, we're going to be diving into everything you need to know before you make your return into Rice-Eccles Stadium to watch Utah football in action.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube and wherever you may get your podcast. If this is your first time listening to our show, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with all of you in the YouTube comments, as well as on social media, where you can follow our show on X at Locked On Utes. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department, and on today's show, we're previewing everything relating to the spring game, talking about what you need to know about the team, what to watch for, explaining the format in a little bit in a moment, too, and at the very end of the show, also want to close on something about this being Utah football's last official spring game on the Pac-12 Network, which I know we've talked about before, Utah moving away from the Pac-12 and even games being done on the Pac-12 Network, but really want to talk in particular about the Crews, and I think the job the talent has done spotlighting this Utah football team. I think it's something that's to be commended for by all of those individuals that made the Pac-12 Network Crews very special. But before we get into that, of course, want to talk about the game. So what is the 22 Forever game? It is, of course, an opportunity for the Utah football team in their spring game to get better, compete in front of fans, and have fun. But the bigger thing about the 22 Forever game is, of course, the reason that they've called it the 22 Forever game. It's in honor and memory of Ty Jordan and Aaron Lowe. The tickets for the 22 Forever game are actually on sale now, with all proceeds going to the 22 Forever Memorial Scholarship, which is something really cool the Utah Athletic Department does to keep the memories and legacies of Aaron Lowe and Ty Jordan continuing to go strong. The moment of loudness, such a special thing this team does during the season too, and I love that they continue to honor these players' legacies with the 22 Forever game. And also, if you guys do want information on the Utah spring game, I encourage you to go check out the Utah Athletics Department website. That is where you can head over to if you want, and you can donate to the 22 Forever game. I will say as well, all of your guys' the fans' generous donations, this comes to us from the Utah Athletics website. The 22 Forever Memorial Scholarship, with over $900,000 raised in 2021. Utah Athletics has set a goal to hit $1 million to officially make it an endowed scholarship annually, and you can purchase tickets for a variety of basically $22 packages, but all of them going to that 22 Forever Memorial Scholarship, which is, once again, hats off to the University of Utah Athletic Department for not just taking the money and using it for an NIL thing, but using it to actually give it players an opportunity to come play at the University of Utah, putting them on scholarship and keep the memories of those two players alive, with the, once again, the theme being joy that those guys would bring each and every day into the locker room. So I just really love that. You know, we don't always obviously do free random sponsors on this show, but when the topic is that important, I feel like it's worth taking a second to take the time out of too. So once again, I would highly encourage you guys to buy those tickets and support the team. Even if you can't make it up to the game, potentially there's still ways to give and support that scholarship. But talking about the game itself, the game is going to be a little different. Look, the spring game on Saturday will consist of 4 10-minute quarters and a 12-minute halftime. This comes to us from the Utah Athletics website, with the second half being a running clock outside of timeouts. Each team will receive 2 timeouts per half. One thing I found really fun and interesting is coaches Vince Conti, who's been with the team for 16 years, and his brother Don Conti, who has been with the team for a few years now. They will serve as the coaches on the red and white team. Now, of course, Morgan Scally, Andy Ludwig, like all these guys are still going to be kind of running the show and calling the plays and doing their thing as well. But this is something we've seen tons of teams do before. I know that there's former veterans. I think a few years ago it was Rob Gronkowski and Teddy Bruschi both came back to the University of Arizona, and they served as coaches on the other side. So I always love it when teams have fun with their spring game coaches. And I think it's cool that Utah is pitting two brothers against each other, especially a guy like Vince, who has contributed so much to this Utah football team over his 16 years helping out. So that's kind of the format, the coaching situation. Now let's talk about the actual play on the field, which is always interesting because of what we learn about this Utah football team. Now I'm going to say it right off the top for those of you who are tuning in saying, I can't wait to get 4 quarters of Cam Rising and Brant Kuithe. That's not how these things work. Cam and Brant, it's listed that they're going to play. I think that was a question we all had, is like, are they even going to give it a go? But obviously Cam's not going to be touched by any means. The quarterbacks were never going to go live during the spring. Coach Witt revealed in a press conference recently. And Brant's a guy too. I expect him to get roughed up too much, even though he'll be running routes. But I think those guys will get a drive each. They are playing together on the same team. The Utah Athletics website did release the teams and who everyone will be on. So Cam and Brant will be on the red team together. Also, some fun and interesting notes on here too. You have guys like Tayshawn Lyons, Dorian Singer are both going to be on the red team. Also, Money Park. So is that the potential top 3 receivers right now? Is Lyons already ascended to that point? That's something I don't know, but I do think it's interesting that a lot of the first team offense guys are together. Now, I will say it's not completely the first team guys because you get a guy like Mekhi Bernard who is on the white team, and I do expect him to be the starting running back for the team in most of the games. I don't know if he's going to get all of the carries. That wasn't always the case the past few years when he would be the starting running back, but I do think he's going to be the guys on the field a lot, especially early on, and then they'll see kind of who has it going from there. But speaking of running backs, Jalen Glover will be the running back on the first team. Brandon Rose, which that'll be really key, obviously, is also going to be on the red team there. And then looking at the other side, you have Isaac Wilson on the white team, and he'll be paired with guys, a veteran in Micah Pittman, as well as David Washington and Darren Zipper, which I think is really fun to have the freshmen who have been really strong and made a lot of plays during spring camp in action. I'm excited to take a look at these guys and a lot of the other under the radar guys. That's what spring ball is about. It's not about, is Cam Rising still good at football? Is Brant Kuithe still good at football? Like, yes, they still have rust to shake off, and I understand some of the bigger questions and concerns we'll have about those guys come the fall, but this is much more about getting our first look at Tayshawn Lyons, or also just leaving excited and optimistic. 2 years ago, during spring ball, we heard a lot about Devon Vele and the job he had done just torching the Utah defense during spring practices, right? Then the spring game comes along. Him and Cam put together like one drive. I think they hooked up twice for like 2 huge plays, and that was it. And we were like, okay, Devon Vele is probably going to have a big season. That's exactly what happened back in the fall of 2022. Looking back on last year's spring game, Brandon Rose won the spring game. He was exceptional, stole all the hype and the highlights. I expect him to have a good one in this year's spring game too, as we talked about a lot on yesterday's show. But I do think he was a guy in last year where obviously he had the injury, but even with that, Brandon Rose might have beat him out. There was a lot of things there too, but there was always going to be guys who win and create excitement and hype in the spring game. Some of them will be a Devon Vele. The carbon copy of that is probably going to be Dorian Singer. I would be shocked if Dorian Singer didn't make at least 1 or 2 really nice plays that move the chains in the spring game, especially since, Cam's going to have the time to throw, and they're not going to be, defenses isn't going to be bearing down on him too. And I even talked about yesterday's show. I'm excited to watch the offensive line and see how they hold up against some of Utah's pass rushers, because yes, they're not going to be getting back there and throwing Cam Rising to the ground, but they'll still be going live. So I think that'll be something to watch for too. But continuing with the theme of getting a look at these guys, right? I already mentioned Singer. He's going to be the number 1 receiver on this team. Tayshawn Lyons is a guy that we've heard good things about, but we haven't gotten to see those with our own eyes yet. And that's what the spring game is for. We've all read the reports from spring ball. I've talked about them ad nauseum on this show, right? Because that's what we do here on Locked On Utes. We talk about Utah football. We're looking for any kind of content we can get our hands on at some point in the spring. And when you hear any rumors, you're going to be talking about them. But now we get to see it for our own eyes. How does Lyons look? How do the safeties look? I'm really excited to see that and check out how this group is gelling and coming together. All the main groups, the ones that most importantly being the offensive line, the defensive backs, and the wide receivers, who all have at least a couple of question marks. And I'm excited to see those get answered, at least for spring. How does the team look right now? It won't be a finished product until the fall, when the wins and losses and the bad plays you make actually matter. But the spring game is an opportunity for these guys to get out there, learn from some of their mistakes too, try some different things. And for us as fans to come together inside Rice-Eccles Stadium again, as we love to do so much in the fall, and have a great time watching Utah football. So that's what's going to be so fun about the spring game. But we're just getting started talking about this big game. There's a lot we can learn from the spring game too. And that is something I want to dive into in one moment. But first, I want to talk to you about one of the sponsors of today's episode of Locked On Utes. It's our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number 1 ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. Talking more things about the spring game, as I mentioned, we are going to have an opportunity to learn a few things about this Utah football team because we all enjoy hearing what's happening, but now we get to see for our own eyes. And I think the most eyes, at least as it pertains to Utah football fans, excuse me, not Utah football fans, as everyone who's watching this, of course, is, but at least as it just pertains to, that big kind of hanging question mark around the quarterback position, because that's what a lot of fans, of course, care about. Number one, it's who's going to look better. Is Brandon Rose the guy? Is he the backup quarterback? Is Isaac Wilson really been that good as a true freshman where he's pushing Rose for the job? Or is it a classic Kyle Whittingham just kind of trying to say things and push Rose to the point to making him the best he can be by not handing him the job, even though he's clearly been the best guy? That's what we get to see for ourselves. I've said, I think both are going to look good, but I do think Wilson probably makes a mistake or two, just being a freshman. It's not going to be his first game inside Wistrcill Stadium. He's lost a state championship there. He's won a state championship there, and obviously seen some massive games being played inside that stadium, not just as a high school guy, but in other visits and things coming up of that nature. So excited to see what Isaac can do there, but really excited to see Rose. How do we feel about the backup quarterback spot? Kyle Whittingham did not slam the door on going in the transfer portal to find a backup quarterback. I don't think Utah is going to do that. I think they like the backups in their room. We talked about that earlier this week, that I do feel like Utah has quality backup quarterbacks. Yes, they don't have a guy where it's like, oh, if Cam got hurt, then the play wouldn't drop off, but no real college team does. If you asked Arizona fans, like, hey, if Jaden Delora gets hurt, are we going to be in trouble? I guarantee you they all would have said, yeah. They had no idea what Fafita was going to come in and then do shortly after. So going to be really exciting to watch and see how an Isaac Wilson and Brandon Rose look in this game. Get to see a little Luke Batari too, maybe some of the other quarterbacks sprinkled in. And this is just a fun game too, because we get to see these guys that we don't see as much. The recruits that we've talked about, like, oh, this guy's been waiting in the program. Maybe when this guy moves on, he'll have next. Last year, we saw a guy in Keanu Tanuvasa. Did he pop as much in the spring? I don't believe so. Obviously came on stronger in fall camp, but that's a guy who, amidst all the hype of the returners and even at other spots you have transfers, right? That's a guy within the program who just worked his butt off, got better, and became one of the best defensive tackles on Utah's roster. And that's something that's really exciting when you have a guy that you develop that well and that buys into what you're telling your guys, basically, that he reaches that level as a player. He's able to crack the field. We're going to get to see a lot of these guys too. Like one of those being an example of is we get our first taste of, we already mentioned the freshman receivers, right? Washington and Zipper. How are those guys going to pop? We saw Mikey Matthews make a number of really nice grabs in the spring game last year. And the guy's excited about the sign to come. And he had a pretty good first season with Utah. Then unfortunately he left. So hopefully these guys are going to stay a little bit longer too, right? But other new guys we're going to get a chance to get a look at. How about another freshman, Hunter Andrews, who's an early enrollee guy. He gets his first game inside Wistrcill Stadium. Excited to see what he can do. The safety spot we already talked about a little bit, but getting Gilman back out there. How are all the safeties going to look? I saw what Jonathan Hall and Nate Ritchie did in the bowl game. I've seen what Gilman can do at Stanford. We've heard great things about Teo Johnson. Who is going to look like the best guys in the defensive backfield? That's something we're going to be able to watch and see with our own eyes and make a decision on. And that's something that excites me. Cameron Calhoun, we get to see him for the first time in the Utah helmet. This is a guy who's a former 4-star corner, went to the University of Michigan. Oh, you didn't play for the national champions. Big whoop. Like I'm not at all down on this guy's future, as we've talked about a lot on this show. I think he's got a chance to still do some really nice things too. And there's a lot of guys on this Utah defense that obviously have a chance, and the offense too, honestly, that have a chance to be really special difference makers for this team, because it's just an incredibly talented Utah defense, as is often the case when led by Morgan Scalley, Sharif Shaw, and just the amount of returning talent that this Utah football team has back to is something that I'm really excited about too. So the amount of guys we're going to see, not just seeing, yes, Cam and Brant, when they jog out on the field together and do the first drive, that's what'll have everyone the most excited. But who are the other guys? Who are the valuable backups that are earning that experience and standing out? Who are the guys that are making plays and doing big things in preparation for when we get to fall camp, that are going to have a chance to see the field and start? There's a linebacker spot open now, at least the third one, because Demooney is, of course, injured. Who's going to fill that void? Something we get to see in the spring game, whether it's Fotu, Lopez is another guy, or excuse me, Lopes is another guy who's in that running there too. So lots of exciting storylines to keep an eye on for spring ball too. And who's going to make the big play? Remember a couple years ago when Makai Cope had that one-handed catch that made everyone go absolutely wild? Who's going to be that? Is it going to be the Dorian Singer? Is it going to be David Washington, one of the freshmen who does it too? That's another thing that's always kind of fun and exciting to see in a spring game. So looking forward to all the different things. And you know what else I'm just looking forward to about the spring game? It's fun. Especially like if you're watching on the Pac-12 Network, they do lots of interviews with the players throughout it. You see everyone smiling, laughing. By the time you get to the end of the game, the starters have their pads off, and the third string running back or whoever it is, receiver, like is going to make a big grab, and the one team's going to go crazy. The one team's going to be all mad and everything, and they'll be mad. But I say, everyone's out there is having a good time. They're having fun. That's what the spring game is about. And I just am excited to have Utah football back. Yes, it's an inter-squad scrimmage and they're going against each other, but it's an opportunity to see this team, and especially a lot of the new guys in action, can give us a taste. We already talked about Devon Bailey and Cam Rising really developing a stronger rapport in spring ball 2 years ago that led to great things in 2022. We've heard Cam and Dorian Singer have started to develop that. And even though Micah Pittman's on the other team, we've heard Pittman's had a strong spring camp. Are him and Wilson going to hook up? It's our first chance to see Wilson as a Utah quarterback. Once again, lots of things, individual storylines we can look at and be excited about with this. But I go back again, the spring games, they're fun. Everyone gets together. You come in. It's not a long game. It's a good length. Not like it's like, hey, you're in and you're not getting your money's worth because it's too quick, but it's enough time where you're enjoying the game. There's action. You're having fun, and you get to see a lot of these Utah football players in action. We get to see the starters, of course, in the big games in the fall, but this is kind of like what this is watching a live scrimmage practice, seeing the guy. If you're someone who has been following these recruits and you're like, why hasn't so-and-so been playing? Well, now you get to see that guy in action, right? This is the game where it's like, oh, he looks really good here. Oh, maybe that's why he hasn't risen through the ranks quite yet. All of those things are always fun to track for and interesting. And I'm just excited to have the spring game in action because it gives us something to watch and look. And Utah football is back. And if you're watching this show a day before the spring game, you definitely love Utah football. So it's going to be awesome to have it there. Let me know in the comments, guys, what are you most excited about having the spring game back? Who are you looking for to watch? I said on yesterday's show, I cheated a little bit, but I do think Brandon Rose is going to be the big winner leaving this game, with I'll give an asterisk too for Dorian Singer being the guy who pops and makes a few big plays that everyone's like, oh, I'm really excited about for him too. But last thing's just what I'm watching for. Again, I want to see which wide receivers look the best because there are some spots potentially up for grabs there. Who is the running back room? How's Mike Mitchell going to look? We finally get our eyes on him. The offensive line, they're still going to be playing against some pretty good pass rushers. So are they able to hold up even though Cam's not going to get sacked? And how did the safeties shine in this one? A group that has so much talent, but of course, only the best guys are going to be able to play come the fall. So lots of exciting things to look forward to about the spring game. And of course, we'll be talking about it a lot on Locked On Utes next week. But before we do talk about get out of here and just look forward to next week when we'll be breaking down the spring game, I want to talk about this one being on Pac-12 Network. It's the last Utah football game. Even I put game with an asterisk, of course, but still the 22 Forever game. So still an organized football game on the Pac-12 Network. And I want to talk about the meaning of that, specifically talking about the crews that are coming in, and that being the Ted Robinsons, Yogi Roth, and just the job I always feel the talent has done in highlighting the Utah football program. We're going to be diving into that in one moment. But first, I want to talk to you all about another sponsor of our episode on Locked On Utes. It's our friends at Gametime. Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, with great last-minute deals, all-in-price views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime truly takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. You can pick out any specific game or matchup that you'd love to attend, and you guys can go to all these events and find them easily on Gametime. There's a nice app that Gametime's just an easy app to navigate. It allows you to find every kind of MLB tickets you're looking for. They offer views from your seats, so you know exactly what kind of a deal you're getting for. They have event cancellation protection, job loss protection, even a low price guarantee. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Plus that Gametime guarantee, where Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference if you find tickets in the same section and row for less. So you can save up to 60% off buying last minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater events near you, especially if you key in on some of those flash deals. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege. It's capital LONC in Locked On and College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE with capital LONC for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, to close this one out, I want to talk about the Pac-12 Network. And yes, there's been a lot of issues with the Pac-12 Network in terms of like the accessibility of the games, right? Like if you don't have the Pac-12 Network, you can't get everything. The times of the games at times have also been something that's been difficult, right? If you're trying to, find it that way. The Pac-12 After Dark has been something that's been fun too. But either way, there's been issues with Pac-12 Network, of course, that have been talked about a lot. But one thing I always really appreciate about the Pac-12 Network was the job they did covering Utah football, making Utah football feel like they really matter. Having College Game Day out here was absolutely sensational last year. And this is not a shot at College Game Day. They have a lot of campuses they got to try to go to. But it is one of those things when you look back on, it's cool that we can appreciate how often the Pac-12 Network has made their visits and trips up to Rice-Eccles Stadium, how much they've had talent on sites, taking the time to interview the stars and spotlight their talents and their stories. I think Yogi Roth does a tremendous job. He's someone that we've had on this show before because he's one of the best college football analysts, regardless of network in the game to me. Ted Robinson has always done a great job guiding everyone through the action in the play-by-play role. You can tell how excited these guys get to come out to Rice-Eccles Stadium too and call a Utah football game. They've truly elevated the product too. They've been huge fans of this Utah football program, not in a biased way, but just been like, we respect what Kyle Whittingham is building. And I think that's something that is really exciting that Utah football continues to, as they've continued to trend upward, that always being there was the Pac-12 Network talent to spotlight that, whether it was the two play-by-play and then the analyst and Yogi and Ted, as I just highlighted, or an Ashley Adamson and the crew coming in to cover it live that way too. I think it's an awesome thing of the Pac-12 Network talent. They never did this Utah team a disservice with their coverage. And that is something we will definitely miss potentially. And we just have to hope the Big 12 gives Utah that. Is the Big 12 going to treat Utah as a priority in terms of making them saying, hey, this is one of our elite brands. Like, let's get our crews out there and all the things of that nature. Or is it going to be like, well, we're used to these other more traditional Big 12 schools? That's something we just don't know. But I appreciate that. I never felt like the Pac-12 Network was like, let's just do a USC and let's just do a Colorado. And yeah, of course, those games were on. And it's still funny to say that about Colorado because it was just last year. And yes, a lot of those games were on the main ESPNs and things of that nature. But like I said, I just never felt like that the Pac-12 Network made decisions because like, oh, let's talk about these bigger brands and not give a Utah their shine. I thought they did a good job of that. So that's something we'll potentially miss in the Big 12, or I'll say this, the Big 12 has a tough act to follow in terms of the job the talent did covering this Utah football team. And they're going to be in action one last time, calling the spring game. You guys can tune in, or once again, you can head over, buy your tickets with all of the proceeds going to the 22 Forever Scholarship. It's a great cause, and I encourage you guys to go and check it out, whether that is just by purchasing tickets and going to the game or just donating to it. So make sure you guys head out and check out all of that. I hope you all have a wonderful time at the spring game, whether you're going in person or watching it on Pac-12 Network for the final time. And make sure you guys come back next week on Locked On Utes, as we'll be breaking down all of the Utah football action in its glory, reacting to what happened with the quarterbacks and all of the other key positions. And we get to see Cam Rising and Brant Kuithe, at least for a drive. I can't wait. I know personally. I'm sure you guys can't either. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the spring game. And we'll be back with you next week talking all things Utah football and Utah athletics.